And we're back with part 3 of our discussion of The Horse Dealer's Daughter. And actually, I'm sitting in the middle of a pond because we have the very important pond scene in the story. And luckily it seems frozen, so we'll see. So the doctor, our friend Dr. Ferguson, he is walking along out to visit one of his patients, and he sees Mabel walking through the field. And he sees her walking toward a pond. And there's this sort of, I don't want to say Lawrence is sort of into clairvoyance or the metaphysical, the psychic stuff, but he is sort of, and there is a little bit of that to us, right? I'm not a big believer in psychic abilities or anything like that, but I do think that we can sort of, there are sensibilities that we have inside of us that we're not aware of, like animals have. By the way, D.H. Lawrence compares the people in the story here to animals, often a very anti-Victorian thing. Lawrence is sort of a post-Victorian writer, in my view, where people were viewed as different, above animals, but he always sees the animal in people, and I like that, because we're not that different from animals. Anyway, so he's walking along. It was Mabel Pervin. His mind suddenly became alive and attentive. Ooh, he's got the hots for her, to say the least. What was she doing down there? He seemed to see her in the midst of such obscurity that he was like a clairvoyant, seeing rather with the mind's eye than with ordinary sight. And he's watching her, he's watching her, he's watching her, and she walks right into the pond. And of course, you know, I don't care what time of the year it is, a woman in 1922 is wearing a lot of clothes. She's not wearing shorts and a t-shirt, and she's going to get soaked and sink right in. And of course, he can't believe it. He stood motionless as the small black figure walked slowly and deliberately towards the center of the pond. This is her in sort of an altered state, finally moving towards the world of death that is so real to her. She is going into the world of the dead, where her mother is, and of course where her father is, but I think she's more into it where her mother is. And he runs down, and not exactly your you know, Marvel superhero guy here, but bless him, he's doing his best. He slowly ventured in the pond. The bottom was deep, soft clay. He sank in, and the water clasped dead round his legs. As he stirred, he could smell the cold, rotten clay that fouled up into the water. So it's almost the smell of decay, the smell of death. He could not swim and was afraid, our hero, right? In so doing, he lost his balance and went under, horribly suffocating in the foul, earthy water. Not exactly Aquaman here. And then she pops up. So he doesn't exactly, you know, go dive in and pull her out, but that's okay. He's doing his best here. She had risen near him, almost like even death, even the earth, is rejecting her and shooting her back up out of the water. He grasped her clothing and, drawing her nearer, turned to make his way to land again. He went slowly. The water was now only about his legs. He was thankful, full of relief, to be out of the clutches of the pond, the clutches of death, right? He made the water come from her mouth. You know, I shouldn't joke here, but it is made up. I picture it like a cartoon where he's pumping her leg and the water is coming out of her mouth and a fish comes out. But that's kind of crude, Mr. Berninger. She does come to. She's conscious but unconscious of her surroundings. So he sort of hauls her back to the house. He takes her clothes off because they're very wet, and she's naked, right? She's naked. By the way, you know, this is not really too hot of stuff going on here, but D.H. Lawrence is widely known for writing very implied sex scenes in his novels, and of course in one of his later novels, Lady Chatterley's Lover, it's just not even implied, and the book was banned, and it's not that great of a book, to tell you the truth, but there's a lot of sex in it. He takes her clothes off, right? Then she comes to. She's suddenly naked, right? After attempting suicide. Who knows where she thinks that she is. Did you dive in the pond for me? She asked. So suddenly, we got a whole new Mabel here. A whole new Mabel here. And he's honest. No, I walked in, but I went overhead as well. So he kind of tries to make himself look the hero without really lying. His will. So there's something overtaking here. Lawrence is saying there's something in our subconscious. There's something in us that drives us well beyond what we are aware of. His will seemed to have gone to sleep and left him, standing there slack before her. But he felt warm inside himself. He did not shudder at all, though his clothes were sodden on him. Why did you? She asked. Because I didn't want you to do such a foolish thing. It wasn't foolish, she said. It was the right thing to do. I knew best then. Important word, then. I'll go and shift these wet things, he said. But still, he had not the power to move out of her presence until she sent him. It was as if she had the life of his body in her hands. So she is really in his power. He is in her power. Not by choice, not by her, anything that she's doing. He's just so overwhelmed by the situation. For some moments she sat and gazed at him awfully, her lips parted. Do you love me then? She said. Okay, so, all right, this part gets a little, I don't know what to call it. It's a little weird. But they've just, you have to understand they just went through this traumatic event. She just survived a suicide attempt. That's a pretty big deal. He just observed a suicide attempt and did his best. He did save her. And now she's naked and he's there and he's going to get his clothes off. And, they're sort of not in control, she's sort of come back to life after maybe years of being in a way dead. He's sort of under her power. She's this very powerful person to him. You love me. I know you love me. I know you love me, she says. She was passionately kissing his knees, so she's sort of, in a way, bowing to him. He looked down at her tangled hair. He'd never thought of loving her. He never wanted to love her. Well, come on. Can you want to love someone? You can want to. But you can't force yourself to, and sometimes you can't force yourself not to, right? So this is an important lesson. I think it's going to come up again later in the semester. We can't really choose who we fall in love with. We can't choose who we fall in love with. Maybe there's somebody you wish you could fall in love with because they're very nice, they're financially and emotionally stable, they have good teeth, but you just don't. And then there's people who are not financially and emotionally stable, who have bad teeth. And for some reason you love them, right? Love is a mysterious thing. She finally has someone who has demonstrated caring for her, right? I think he cared for her before, but he just didn't really show it. He was afraid to. She's a very intimidating person. And now he sort of was forced into showing it by saving her and tending to her like this. Her hands were drawing him down to her. He was afraid, even a little horrified, for he had really no intention of loving her. Yet her hands were drawing him toward her. He had no intention of loving her. His whole will was against his yielding. It was horrible. So there's this sort of tear inside of him, some powerful force beyond us that D.H. Lawrence was so interested in, and we should all be interested in, right? Let's not be foolish and think we're always in command of ourselves. That's just stupid to think that, right? And who would want to be, right? Life would be so boring. We'd just be robots, right? Programming ourselves. And his heart seemed to burn and melt away in his breast. He's ripped open, and then he's ripped open again, right? So this is such a deep, intense scene, because I think that the intensity here is, since she's been 14 years old, she's just had a complete absence of love in her life. Her brothers don't seem to love her or can't show it. Maybe her father did, but then he sort of turned on her when he remarried. And she's just had nothing. And what is she now, 27? So for 13 years, she's had this huge void, and finally this suicide attempt, the doctor showing this, she's become this powerful ball of neediness, an insatiable force of energy that's just drawing him in. And he liked her already, we know that. "You love me," she said rather falteringly. Yes, the word cost him a painful effort, not because it wasn't true, because it was too newly true. The saying seemed to tear open his newly torn heart, and he hardly wanted it to be true even now. With one kiss. So then they kissed. He never intended, this keeps coming up, he never intended to love her. So feelings, right? Feelings, we think with our head, we intend things with our head, but boy, our hearts are just more powerful sometimes, and in some people. And it's important to find some kind of balance with your head and your heart in life. And it's painful, right? And so he sort of had this objective distance we talked about earlier as a doctor, and he likes being close to the raw life of the rough life of the countryside, that these people, where he practices his medicine. But now he's sort of being ripped open and drawn into her. It's intense, and D.H. Lawrence is such a great writer. You really feel the intensity. Okay. He changes his clothes, right? She puts on a really nice outfit. This is when it gets really a little weird. Must you? Okay. He's got to go. He's like, I got to go. He's trying to get away from this force, and he's got to get back to the surgery, to his patients. Must you? She says. And again, from the pain of his breast, he knew how he loved her. He went and bent her. And then she sort of turns on it, right? And this is really kind of the you know what? I'm not going to be able to finish this in this part. So I'm going to cut off part 3 here, and we're going to move on to a part 4.